Here with head coach Brad Laird, the 2023 season opener a few days away, Saturday at UL Lafayette. Coach, I know it's your sixth opener as a head coach, and I can't count how many it's been as a player and as a coach, but does this feeling ever get old for you?
No, it doesn't. I don't see how it could, because you spend so much time. I mean, you go back to, December, when the 2022 season was over. You jump right into, recruiting and finish recruiting. Then you jump into spring practice and summer and fall camp and, all the time that you spend, to get so many opportunities on Saturday or Saturday nights. And so, to have this one, the opener, you look forward to just playing somebody else. You spend spring ball, summer, fall camp going against yourself, and you're just ready to see somebody else on the other sideline. So, looking forward to having that opportunity Saturday night.
It's one that'll come an hour later, so it's not like you have to wait a long time anyway. Now you got to wait another hour, but it should maybe feel a little bit more like football weather once the sun goes down.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you consider football weather, the way it's been, but yeah, to be under the lights, Saturday night. First home game for Lafayette, first game for both teams. So, you'd expect a good crowd. It's a 2-hour drive from Natchitoches for our fans, but also, within the state of Louisiana, if you're a fan of Lafayette or Northwestern State, you're kind of right there in the center. So, it should be a great turnout.
This schedule you have, the first 3 games are all very familiar from your time as a player, from generations back. You're talking longtime rivals, Lafayette, Louisiana Tech, Stephen F. You don't need much more fuel to the fire to start the season, but when you see an old rival, it's maybe not old for some of these guys, but it's got to encourage and kind of fire up the fan base.
Yeah, just, me as a player and a coach had the opportunity to play and coach against, all 3 of those teams that you mentioned, Lafayette, Louisiana Tech, and Stephen F. But when you look at, just take the first 2, with Lafayette and Louisiana Tech, in-state non-conference games. I don't think it can be any better. I think it just gives, the fan base an opportunity, to see both teams. And, and a lot of our guys played against some of their guys in high school. Some of them played with them. And then also on the recruiting trail, recruiting against, Lafayette and sometimes recruiting the same guys. So, when you play an in-state non-conference foe, there's a lot of similarities on both teams.
You could make the argument there's similarities between the head coaches. You and Mike Desenbro were both quarterbacks in Louisiana. You both coached high school in Louisiana. Now you're both head coaches at the collegiate level. But when you look there, it's his second full year as the head coach. What do you see from them in terms of you had such great turnover. A lot of people in the FCS had turnover. I'm sure they did too. Does that change how things look the next year?
Well, one, there is a difference between me and Coach Desenbro. I played in the 90s. He played in the 2000s and later on, so there is an age difference. But, going into game 1, there's a lot of newcomers on both teams. And so, yes, you're going to have some returners, and so you kind of get an idea. They went to a bowl game last year in his first season, coming off, I guess you could say the historic run they had with Coach Napier and him being on staff and carrying that over. But always that first game, especially now, who's the newcomers, where do they fit in schematically in all 3 phases. So, that'll be a fun thing to watch, as for both teams, as, the newcomers join the returners to see what type of football team you have.
New on your coaching staff is a guy who's probably familiar with their coaching staff, and Chris Gistorb was a player down there, then coached there last year before coming to you. I know he's already made a very big difference on this defensive line. He's one of those 5 new assistant coaches that I know to a man you're elated to have all 5 of those guys here.
I tell you, just really enjoy our staff. Not just the X's and O's, but Just off the field, in the meeting rooms, camaraderie. But talking about Coach G, coming from Lafayette, he's going to be fired up about having the opportunity to go back down and compete against a bunch of guys that he coached and a bunch of coaches that he coached with. That's always the fun part of this business is, there's so many friends that you make in this business, but for those 3 hours, you put the friendship to the side. So, I know it'll be fun for him to be able to have that opportunity. And you also look, we talked about Coach Desimo, but, I'd have to mention, Coach Matt Viator, who I never coached with Coach V, but just got the utmost respect, as I came into the conference, him being at McNeese and, just a good friend that, will help anybody. He's just, one of those guys that you want in your corner and one on your side. And so it'll be fun also to be able to compete against him.
We've talked about it the last couple of years. There's been a sea change in the world of college athletics. You've had a lot of newcomers the last 2 years. One thing that, as you've mentioned before, we've talked about this, sometimes the guys that don't get talked about are the guys who stayed. And the importance of them being able to welcome those guys in. We talked to Colby Burrell. He's been on both sides, came in last year as a new guy. Now he's here as a returner. Just the importance of them being able to welcome those new guys and bring this team together in such a relatively quick period. Because you talked about it, you had a large number of guys who had not been here until this summer, and it seemed like through camp the chemistry had already developed at a pretty rapid rate.
Yeah, and that's always, how do you go about building, the team chemistry? Because, you talk about the 31 newcomers along with the incoming freshmen. So, you're close to 50 guys that were not here last fall. Some coming in the spring, some not coming till the summer. But you have 62 guys that are returners. And so, I think it works both ways. One, the returners, welcoming the transfers of the incoming freshmen, and then also those newcomers that are coming in, being open-minded, to making this thing work. And I think both sides have really done a great job. We knew that was going to be a focal point, with family meetings that we do. We started during fall camp. We continue to do them now just to get to know each other, know their background, know their journey. And not just the players, just like, we talked about the 50-plus newcomers, but you also got 5 new coaches, full-time coaches, and then, some volunteer coaches and graduate assistants that are new. So all of them having the opportunity to share their story and get to know each other a little bit more. And that has been a success for us.
Last year, in a lot of ways, even though it was your 5th year, there were a lot of first since moments for this team. The first 4-0 start in conference play since the 80s, the first this, the first that's. Tough ending to the season. What do you take from those last couple of games that you can apply going into this opener and into this season?
When we get in that position again, we want to make sure that we're ready to take advantage of that opportunity. And I'll point that at me. There's some things that I would have to do better leading up to, the last couple of games. But, we talked about that early because I wanted, the returners, they had that feeling that they hadn't had in a while. And I wanted the newcomers that were coming in, to feel that energy that the returners felt, during that stretch. And I think you saw that. We talked about it. We put it to rest. Because, the 23 season is going to be one of its own. And so we look forward to writing this chapter, and you can't write it all in one day. And so, we want to take one day at a time. November 18th, we'll get here. We want that game to mean a lot, but you got to take care of your business now, and that's been our focal point.
This will simply be the first chapter in the book of 2023.
Well, the fall camp, the preseason games, they got to be in there somewhere. But this will be the first big chapter of the book.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate your time.